Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo stood on the bridge of the battleship Absolute, watching as the human armada assembled. 60 warships, carriers, destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels. The largest human fleet since the First Contact War, and every ship was ready for combat. This would not be a defensive battle. This would not be a rescue mission. This was an invasion. Humanity was taking the war directly to the Kreth homeworld. They would strike at the heart of the Empire and end this threat permanently. Kyung-soo had spent 40 years in the military. He had trained for this his entire life. Earth's isolation had been necessary, but it went against every instinct he had. Humans were not meant to hide. They were meant to fight, to explore, to dominate. Now finally they could. Captain Jae-hwan commanded a strike group of 12 destroyers. His ship, Indomitable, would lead the first wave. Behind him were veterans from the Velkai battle. They knew what to expect. They were hungry for more. Lieutenant Subin coordinated fleet tactics. She had created a battle plan that was both brilliant and terrifying. The human fleet would not engage the Kreth Navy directly. Instead, they would bypass the outer defenses and strike critical infrastructure. Weapons foundries, supply depots, command centers. They would cripple the Empire before the Kreth could mount an effective defense. Major Yoonji prepared her special forces teams for ground operations. While the fleet destroyed military targets, her soldiers would infiltrate the Kreth Imperial Palace. Their mission was simple: capture or kill the Emperor. Remove the Kreth leadership and the Empire would collapse. The human armada jumped to faster than light speed. The journey to Kreth space would take 3 days. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to check weapons and review tactics. 3 days to think about what they were about to do. On Velkai Prime, Dr. Hana monitored long-range sensors. She could not see the human fleet directly, but she tracked their progress through the information network. Other species were also watching. The entire galaxy knew something was about to happen. Commander Tae Yang sat with Ambassador Jiwoo in a quiet observation room. They discussed what humanity's attack would mean for the galaxy. If humans defeated the Kreth Empire completely, they would become the dominant military power. No one else could challenge them. That was both reassuring and frightening. Jiwoo expressed her concerns carefully. She was grateful to humanity for saving the Velkai, but she wondered if they had simply traded one dangerous neighbor for another. Taeyang did not answer. He had the same worries. The human fleet arrived at the edge of Kreth space exactly on schedule. They did not pause, did not send warnings. They simply penetrated the Empire's borders and began their assault. The Kreth had prepared defenses, minefields, automated weapon platforms, patrol fleets. The human ships destroyed everything in their path. Their weapons were so advanced that most Kreth defenses could not even detect them before being destroyed. Admiral Kyung-soo watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The Kreth had expected a conventional invasion. They deployed their forces to defend key routes and strategic points, but humans did not fight conventionally. The human fleet split into multiple groups. Each group targeted different objectives simultaneously. The Kreth command structure could not coordinate a response. By the time they understood where one human group was attacking, 3 more had struck elsewhere. Captain Jae-hwan led his destroyers against the reality weapon foundries. These facilities produced the Kreth's most powerful weapons. Destroying them would ensure the Kreth could never threaten the galaxy again. The foundries were heavily defended, but Jae-hwan's ships moved too fast. They struck with surgical precision, reducing each facility to rubble before moving to the next target. Major Yoonji's dropships descended on the Kreth homeworld under cover of orbital bombardment. Her teams fought through elite Kreth warriors with brutal efficiency. Human soldiers were smaller than Kreth, but they were faster, smarter, and better equipped. Most importantly, they worked together perfectly. The assault on the Imperial Palace lasted 4 hours. Yoonji's soldiers cleared room by room, corridor by corridor. They encountered resistance at every turn, but nothing stopped them. Human training and human determination overwhelmed every defense. Finally, Yoonji reached the throne room. The Kreth Emperor waited there, surrounded by his personal guard. They were the finest warriors the Empire could produce. They lasted less than 2 minutes. The Emperor stood alone, facing Yoonji across the massive chamber. He demanded to know why humanity was doing this, why they were destroying his empire. What had the Kreth done to deserve such violence? Yunji's response was cold and precise. You asked for war. You attacked our allies. You thought you were invincible. We came to teach you otherwise. The Emperor tried to fight. He was strong and skilled. But Yunji had trained her entire life for combat. The Emperor fell. The Kreth Empire lost its leader, and with him it lost its will to fight. Within days, the Kreth military collapsed. Some fleets surrendered. Others scattered and fled. A few tried to continue fighting and were destroyed. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for decades simply ceased to exist. The human fleet regrouped in orbit above the Kreth homeworld. They had accomplished their mission with minimal losses. 12 human soldiers had died in the ground assault. 3 ships had taken damage but were repairable. Against those losses, the Kreth Empire was destroyed completely. Admiral Kyung-Soo broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. His words were transmitted on every frequency, translated into every known language. The message was both a declaration and a warning. Humanity is back. We did not ask for your wars, but we will finish them. To those who seek peace, we offer friendship and trade. To those who threaten our allies, we offer annihilation. Choose wisely. The galaxy heard the message. Every species, every civilization. They saw what humanity had done to the Kreth. They understood the implications. A new power had emerged. A power that did not negotiate from weakness. A power that struck first and asked questions later. On Velkai Prime, people celebrated in the streets. The Kreth were defeated. The threat was gone. They had survived because humanity saved them. Dr. Hana watched the celebrations with mixed emotions. She was happy they were safe. But she also understood what had really happened. Ambassador Jiwoo stood beside her. The two of them watched the crowds below. Jiwoo spoke quietly, voicing what they both were thinking. The Velkai had called for aid. What they got was not rescue. It was conquest by proxy. Humanity had saved them, yes. But humanity also now controlled their fate. Commander Tae Yang joined them. He understood military power. He knew what the destruction of the Kreth meant. Humanity was now the strongest military force in known space. No one could challenge them, and that meant humanity could dictate terms to everyone. But Tae Yang also recognized something important. Humanity had kept its word. They came when called. They protected their allies. They fought with overwhelming force but did not commit unnecessary atrocities. They were warriors, yes. Dangerous, yes. But they were not monsters. The galaxy would have to adapt to this new reality. Humanity was back and they were here to stay. Species could choose to work with them or against them, but no one could ignore them. On Earth, Admiral Dongmin received the victory reports. He felt satisfaction but not joy. This was not a celebration. This was confirmation that everything they had built during their century of isolation was worth it. Humanity was strong. Humanity was prepared. Humanity would survive. Colonel Minji asked him what came next. The Kreth were defeated, but other threats existed in the galaxy. Should humanity continue expanding its influence? Should they seek more allies? Or should they return to isolation with their message delivered? Dongmin considered the question carefully. He thought about all the years of hiding, all the years of preparation, all the sacrifices humanity had made to survive. His answer was simple. We do not hide anymore. We do not run anymore. The galaxy tried to destroy us once and failed. They will not get a second chance. Humanity will remain visible, remain strong, remain vigilant. We will protect our allies and punish our enemies. That is how we survive. That is how we win. The story of humanity's return spread across the stars. Songs were written. Stories were told. Some painted humans as heroes. Others portrayed them as conquerors. The truth, as always, was complicated. Humans were survivors. They were warriors. They were protectors and destroyers. They were everything the Velkai had hoped for, and everything the Kreth had feared. They were the species that refused to die. The species that turned tragedy into strength. The species that hid in darkness and emerged as apex predators. The Velkai had called for aid. What came instead were the invaders of Earth. Not invaders bringing destruction, but invaders bringing order. Human order. Human strength. Human determination that nothing in the galaxy would ever threaten them again. The galaxy would never forget, and humanity would make sure of it. Velkai Prime had not seen such a gathering in decades. Representatives from 15 different species filled the Grand Hall. Some came out of curiosity. Others came out of fear. All of them came because of humanity. Premier Yan Wu stood at the center of the hall addressing the assembled delegates. She spoke about the Kreth attack, about how the Velkai had faced certain extinction, and about how 3 human ships had changed everything in 15 minutes of combat. The delegates listened with mixed reactions. Some species remembered the old stories about humans. They remembered a civilization that expanded too quickly, fought too fiercely, and made other species uncomfortable. When humans disappeared, many had been relieved. Now humans were back, and they were not asking permission to return. They were announcing it. General Sora entered the hall with an escort of 4 human soldiers. The delegates turned to look at her. Sora was tall and moved with military precision. Her uniform was simple but intimidating, black with no decorations except a single patch. The patch showed Earth blue and green against a field of stars. Sora walked to the speaking platform without hesitation. She did not ask for permission. She simply took the position that Premier Yan Wu offered her. The delegates shifted uncomfortably. This was not how diplomatic meetings usually worked. Sora began speaking. Her voice was clear and direct. She did not use flowery diplomatic language. She stated facts. Humanity disappeared from galactic affairs 132 years ago. We did not vanish because we were weak. We vanished because we were betrayed. During our first contact with the wider galaxy, we were attacked without provocation. Billions of humans died. Earth itself was nearly destroyed. Several delegates tried to interrupt. Sora ignored them and continued. We asked for help. We asked for justice. The galaxy ignored us. Some species even profited from our suffering, scavenging our destroyed colonies. So we made a choice. We went dark, we hid, and we prepared. We spent over a century making sure that what happened to us would never happen again. Now one delegate stood up. He was from the Theron Republic, a wealthy species that controlled several trade routes. He demanded to know why humans thought they could simply rejoin galactic society after abandoning it. Sora looked at him directly. Her expression did not change. We are not asking permission. We are informing you. Humanity is returning to the galaxy. We will establish our presence on our terms. Any species that welcomes us will find us to be valuable allies. Any species that threatens us will find us to be devastating enemies. The hall erupted in angry voices. Multiple delegates shouted objections. They called Sora arrogant. They said humans could not simply dictate terms to the rest of the galaxy. They demanded that humanity follow proper protocols and procedures. Sora waited for the noise to die down. Then she played a recording. The hall's main display activated, showing the battle at the Velkai defense line. The delegates watched as 3 human ships destroyed 18 Kreth warships. They saw the Kreth reality weapons fail. They saw the most feared fleet in the galaxy retreat in panic. When the recording ended, the hall was silent. Sora spoke again. That was 3 ships. We have hundreds more. The Kreth Empire thought they were invincible. They learned otherwise. We hope the rest of you are smarter than they were. Ambassador Jiwoo stood and addressed Sora. She spoke carefully, trying to bridge the gap between human directness and traditional diplomacy. She asked what humanity wanted. What were their conditions for helping the Velkai? Sora listed 3 requirements. First, Earth's exact location would remain classified. Any attempt to find or approach Earth without permission would be considered an act of war. Second, the Velkai would share all intelligence about the Kreth Empire and any other potential threats. Third, any species that attacked humanity's allies would face total retaliation. No negotiations. No mercy. Dr. Hana listened from her seat in the gallery. She understood what was happening. Humanity was not offering protection. They were demanding tribute. Information and loyalty in exchange for military support. It was harsh, but the Velkai had no other options. Commander Tae Yang sat beside Hana. He had fought in the battle. He had seen what human ships could do. Part of him was grateful. Another part was terrified. The galaxy was gaining a powerful protector. But at what cost? Premier Yanwu asked for time to consider the terms. Sora shook her head. There would be no delay. The Kreth would regroup and attack again. The Velkai needed protection now, not after weeks of debate. The choice was simple. Accept humanity's terms or face the Kreth alone. Yanwu looked at her advisors. She looked at Commander Taeyang and Captain Byung-ho, the military officers who had witnessed human combat capability. She looked at Ambassador Jiwoo, who understood the political implications. They all nodded. The decision was unanimous. Velkai Prime accepted humanity's terms. The formal alliance was signed that day. It was not an equal partnership. Everyone understood that. Humanity held all the power, but for the Velkai it meant survival. And survival was worth any price. News of the alliance spread quickly through the galaxy. Some species approved, others were alarmed. The Kreth Empire was furious. They issued threats and demands. They called humans upstarts and promised destruction. Humanity's response was simple. Come and try. Far away in the Kreth Imperial Core, High Executor Vosh knelt before his emperor. He had survived the battle by escaping early, abandoning his flagship to a subordinate. The emperor was not pleased. Vosh tried to explain. The humans were unlike any species the Kreth had encountered. Their ships moved in impossible ways. Their weapons cut through Kreth shields effortlessly. Most terrifying of all, they had neutralized the reality weapons. The weapons that had made the Kreth Empire dominant were useless against humans. The Emperor listened in growing rage. He demanded to know everything about these humans, where they came from, how many ships they had, what their weaknesses were. Vosh could answer none of these questions. He knew almost nothing about humanity. The Emperor made his decision. The Kreth would prepare. They would gather their full strength. They would develop new weapons, and then they would crush humanity completely. No species challenged the Kreth Empire and survived, but Vosh had seen something in that battle, something that haunted him. The way human ships moved, the precision of their attacks, the cold efficiency with which they destroyed their enemies. These were not the actions of a species fighting for survival. These were the actions of apex predators, hunters who enjoyed the hunt. Vosh spoke one final warning to his emperor. These humans do not fear death. They weaponize it. They turn their own mortality into an advantage. They will come for us. And when they do, they will not stop until we are destroyed. The Emperor dismissed Vosh's concerns. The Kreth had defeated countless species. Humanity would be no different. The Emperor ordered preparations for a massive offensive. He would show these humans what true power looked like. Back on Earth, Admiral Dongmin received reports of the Kreth preparations. He shared the intelligence with his senior staff. Colonel Minji smiled grimly. The Kreth were doing exactly what humanity expected. They were gathering their forces in one place, making themselves a perfect target. Dr. Sung Ho was already working on upgrades to human weapons systems. He wanted to ensure complete dominance in the coming battle. Captain Jae Hwan volunteered to lead the assault force. He had tasted combat with the Kreth. He wanted more. Dongmin approved the plans. Humanity would not wait for the Kreth to attack. They would strike first, strike hard, strike so devastatingly that no other species would ever threaten humanity or its allies again. The Velkai had called for aid. They had received something far more dangerous. They had awakened humanity, and now the galaxy would learn what that truly meant. The age of hiding was over. The age of human dominance was beginning. The Velkai defense fleet was dying. Commander Taeyang watched his tactical display as another friendly marker disappeared. That was the 7th ship they had lost in the past hour. 16 remained. Against 50 Kreth warships, it was not nearly enough. Captain Byung-ho coordinated the defense from his flagship. His voice was calm over the communications network, but Taeyang could hear the strain underneath. Everyone knew this was their final battle. They were buying time for nothing. The civilian evacuation ships had already left. If they were lucky, some Velkai would survive to remember their civilization. Dr. Hana sat at a secondary station, monitoring long-range sensors. She still hoped. 3 days had passed since they sent the message to Earth. 3 days of desperate fighting. 3 days of watching friends die. But she kept watching the sensors, looking for any sign that the humans had heard them. Ambassador Jiwoo stood beside Taeyang. She had no official role in combat operations, but she refused to leave the command center. If they were going to die, they would die together. She thought about all her years of diplomatic work, all her efforts to build alliances and find help. In the end, none of it mattered. The Kreth fleet began charging their reality weapons. Taeyang could see the energy signatures building on his display. In 5 minutes, maybe less, space itself would tear apart around them. The Velkai ships would simply cease to exist. No debris, no survivors. Just empty space where they once were. Byung-ho ordered all remaining ships to concentrate fire on the Kreth flagship. If they were going to die, they would at least damage the enemy. Make them remember this battle. Make them pay for every Velkai life. Then Hana gasped. Her hands flew across her console. She looked up at Tae-yang, her eyes wide. 3 new contacts had appeared on the sensors. They were not Velkai ships. They were not Kreth ships. The computer could not identify them at all. The 3 unknown ships materialized between the Velkai and Kreth fleets. One moment there was empty space. The next moment 3 sleek destroyers appeared. They were smaller than Kreth warships but moved with frightening speed and precision. A message broadcast on all frequencies. The voice was human. It spoke in perfect Velkai with an accent that sounded strange but understandable. The words were simple and direct. We received your signal. We are humanity. You called for aid, but you got something else. You got an old friend who remembers how to fight. Tae-yang could not believe what he was hearing. Humans were real. They existed. And they had come. He opened a channel to respond, but the human ships were already moving. Captain Jae-hwan sat on the bridge of Indomitable, watching the Kreth fleet through his view screen. He felt a familiar sensation in his chest. Battle calm. That moment of absolute clarity before violence began. Beside him, Lieutenant Subin was already marking priority targets. The Kreth fleet turned to face the new arrivals. High Executive Vosh, commander of the Kreth forces, transmitted a demand. He wanted to know what species dared interrupt his conquest. He threatened immediate destruction if they did not retreat. Jae-hwan smiled coldly. He transmitted his response on all channels. Both the Velkai and Kreth would hear his words. We are the species you forgot to finish off. We are the ones who learned. And we have come to return the favor. The Kreth opened fire immediately. Dozens of weapons struck the human ships. Energy beams. Kinetic projectiles. Plasma torrents. The Velkai sensors showed the human shields absorbing everything. Not just absorbing. The shields seemed to grow stronger with each hit. Then the human ships attacked. Their movement was unlike anything the Velkai had seen before. The destroyers did not fly like normal ships. They danced. They twisted through space in impossible angles. They accelerated and decelerated in ways that should have torn them apart. Human weapons fire was precise and devastating. Each shot found its target. Kreth ships began exploding, not just damaged, completely destroyed. The human weapons cut through Kreth shields like they were not there. High Executor Vosh was shocked. No species had ever resisted the Kreth so effectively. He ordered his ships to activate their reality weapons. The same weapons that had destroyed worlds. The weapons that made the Kreth Empire unstoppable. Space around the human ships began to twist and warp. Reality itself started to tear. The Velkai had seen this before. They knew what came next. The human ships would simply vanish, erased from existence. But the human ships did not vanish. Strange fields of energy appeared around them. The reality weapons touched these fields and simply stopped working. The warping effect collapsed. Space returned to normal. The Kreth's ultimate weapons had failed. Dr. Seung-ho's countermeasures worked perfectly. Jae-hwan allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. A century of preparation. A century of fear and hiding. All of it had been worth it for this moment. The human destroyers pressed their attack. Indomitable targeted the Kreth flagship directly. Jae-hwan wanted Vosh to understand something important. Humans did not just fight to win. They fought to dominate, to terrify, to ensure their enemies would never forget them. Relentless and vengeance tore through the Kreth fleet's flanks. Lieutenant Subin coordinated their movements perfectly. The 3 human ships fought as one organism. Every maneuver supported the others. Every attack created opportunities for the next. The Kreth fleet began to break apart. Ships tried to retreat, but the human destroyers were faster. They hunted down each fleeing vessel. There would be no survivors to report what they had seen. No witnesses except the Velkai. Indomitable fired its main weapon at the Kreth flagship. The beam punched through shields, armor, and hull. The massive warship split in 2. High Executor Vosh transmitted one final message before his ship exploded. It was not a threat or a demand. It was a question, what are you? Jae-hwan did not answer. The flagship's explosion answered for him. In 15 minutes of combat, the human ships had destroyed 18 Kreth warships. The rest of the Kreth fleet retreated in disorder. jumping to faster-than-light speeds in panic. Silence filled the Velkai command center. Commander Taeyang stared at his display, trying to process what he had just witnessed. The most powerful fleet in known space had been defeated, effortlessly, completely. Dr. Hana was crying, not from fear or sadness, from relief, from hope. The legends were true. Humans were everything the archives said they were, warriors beyond compare. Captain Byung-ho opened a channel to the human ships. His voice shook slightly as he spoke. He thanked them. He said the Velkai owed them a debt that could never be repaid. He asked if there was anything they needed. Jae-hwan's response was cold, precise. This was not aid. This was a warning. The Kreeth attacked our friends. We came to remind the galaxy why they should fear us. Tell everyone what you saw here today. Tell them humanity has returned. Ambassador Jiwoo understood immediately. The humans had not come to rescue the Velkai out of kindness or compassion. They came to send a message, to announce their return to the galaxy, to show their strength. The Velkai were saved, yes, but they were also witnesses, proof of what humans could do. Taeyang asked the question everyone was thinking. He asked if the humans would stay, if they would help the Velkai rebuild, if they would protect them from future attacks. Jae-hwan's answer was simple. We will discuss terms, but understand this. We did not come as saviors. We came as equals, and equals negotiate. They do not beg. The 3 human destroyers remained in position waiting. The Velkai had called for aid. What they received was far more dangerous. They had awakened something that the galaxy had tried to forget, something that had been hiding in the darkness, growing stronger, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Humanity was back, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The war room was buried 3 kilometers beneath the Gobi Desert. Admiral Dong-min stood before a massive holographic display, watching the Velkai die. The images came from stealth drones that Earth had scattered throughout the galaxy. For over a century, humanity had watched the stars in silence. They saw everything, and they did nothing until now. The hologram showed a battle. Kreeth warships surrounded a Velkai defense station. The Velkai fought bravely, but it was hopeless. Dongmin had seen this pattern before. The Kreeth would toy with their prey first, let them believe they had a chance. Then they would activate their reality weapons and erase everything. Colonel Minji entered the room. She moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. Minji commanded Earth's Special Operations Forces. She was younger than Dongmin by 20 years, but she had seen more combat than most soldiers saw in a lifetime. She looked at the hologram and her jaw tightened. Minji had been advocating for intervention for months. Every day she brought new reports of the Kreeth's advance. Every day she argued that Earth could not hide forever. And every day Dongmin had said no. Dr. Sung-ho arrived next. He was the oldest person in the room, his hair completely white. Seung-ho had been young during the First Contact War. He remembered when humans first reached the stars, full of hope and wonder. He remembered when that hope turned to ashes. The First Contact War had nearly destroyed humanity. They encountered a species called the Valon. At first, the meeting seemed peaceful. Humans offered friendship. The Valon responded with violence. They attacked every human colony they could find. They used weapons that bent reality itself, similar to what the Kreeth use now. Billions of humans died. Earth itself barely survived, but humanity did something the Valon did not expect. They learned. They studied the captured Valon technology. They reverse-engineered it. They made it better. And then they hunted down every Valon ship, every Valon world until nothing remained. After that war, humanity made a choice. They would never again trust the galaxy. Earth went dark. All human colonies were abandoned or hidden. The entire solar system became a fortress. Anyone who came too close simply disappeared. The galaxy forgot about humans. That was exactly what humanity wanted. Seung-ho had spent his entire life studying the Valon technology. He created countermeasures, weapons that could neutralize reality warping devices, ships that could move in ways that broke the laws of physics. He made humanity strong enough that they would never be victims again. The last person to enter was Captain Jae-hwan. He was young for a starship captain, only 35 years old. But he had trained his entire life for war. He commanded the destroyer Indomitable, one of Earth's most advanced warships. Jae-hwan believed in action. He was tired of hiding. Dongmin activated the recording. They all watched as the Velkai message played. Dr. Hana's voice filled the room, speaking in accented but clear English. She explained their situation. She begged for help. She spoke of the old archives that mentioned humanity's promise to aid those in need. When the message ended, silence filled the war room. Everyone waited for Admiral Dongmin to speak. He carried the weight of Earth's future on his shoulders. Whatever he decided would change everything. Dongmin spoke slowly, measuring each word. He reminded them of the First Contact War. He talked about the billions who died because humanity trusted too easily. He explained that revealing Earth's location could bring new enemies. Enemies they might not be able to defeat. Colonel Minji stepped forward. She argued passionately. The Kreth were using Valon-style weapons. If the Kreth were not stopped, they would eventually find Earth anyway. Better to fight them now on humanity's terms than wait for them to arrive at Earth's doorstep. Besides, the Velkai were dying. Did humanity have no compassion left? Dr. Sung-ho added his thoughts. The Kreth weapons were indeed similar to Valon technology, but humanity had spent a century preparing for this exact threat. His countermeasures would work. He was certain. The Kreth reality weapons would be useless against human ships. This was the perfect opportunity to test everything they had built. Captain Jae-hwan spoke last. His words were simple and direct. Humanity had hidden long enough. They had become strong in their isolation. Now it was time to show the galaxy what they had become. Time to remind everyone why humans were feared. He volunteered to lead the mission personally. Dongmin listened to them all. He looked at the hologram again. The Velkai station was losing. Their shields were failing. He could see the Kreth charging their reality weapons. In minutes, thousands of Velkai would die. Just like billions of humans had died a century ago, the Admiral made his decision. He authorized a limited intervention. 3 ships would go. Jae-hwan would command the mission. Their orders were specific. Save the Velkai station, test the countermeasures against the Kreth, but do not reveal Earth's location. Do not show the full extent of human capabilities. Let the galaxy think they were seeing everything, when in truth they would see only a fraction. Minji smiled. It was not the full commitment she wanted, but it was a start. Seung-ho nodded thoughtfully. He would personally oversee the installation of his countermeasures on the 3 ships. Jae-hwan saluted sharply. He already knew which ships he would take. Indomitable would lead. The destroyers Relentless and Vengeance would follow. The preparation took only 6 hours. Human ships were always ready for battle. That was one lesson from the First Contact War that humanity never forgot. Sleep ready, wake ready, live ready to fight. Jae-hwan stood on the bridge of Indomitable as the ship powered up. Around him, his crew moved with practiced efficiency. They were the best of the best. Every officer on human warships was trained to perfection. Failure was not acceptable. Defeat was not possible. Lieutenant Subin approached Jae-hwan. She was his second in command, a tactical genius who saw battles like chess games. Subin had already calculated 17 different scenarios for their encounter with the Kreth. She gave Jae-hwan a slight smile. The odds were in their favor, heavily in their favor. The 3 destroyers left Earth's orbit silently. They activated their stealth systems immediately. Even human sensors could barely detect them. To anyone else in the galaxy, they would be completely invisible, ghosts moving through space. The journey to Velkai space would take 3 days at maximum speed. 3 days while the Velkai fought and died. 3 days while the galaxy watched the Kreth advance. 3 days before everything changed. On Earth, Admiral Dongmin watched the ships disappear from his sensors. He felt a weight in his chest. He had made the decision. Now he would live with the consequences. Humanity was stepping back onto the galactic stage. There would be no turning back after this. Colonel Minji stood beside him. She spoke quietly, her voice carrying a mixture of excitement and concern. She asked if he thought they were making the right choice. Dongmin did not answer immediately. He thought about all the years of hiding, all the years of fear, all the years of preparation. Finally, he responded. He said there was no right choice, only necessary ones. The Velkai had called for help. Humanity would answer, but not as saviors, not as heroes. They would come as warriors, as survivors, as the species that the galaxy had tried to forget but could never truly destroy. The Velkai wanted aid. They would get it. But they would also learn a truth that the galaxy had forgotten. When you call humans for help, you do not get rescue. You get war. Total, absolute, overwhelming war. Because that was the only way humanity knew how to survive. In 3 days, the Kreth Empire would learn this lesson, and then the entire galaxy would remember why humans were once feared. The alarms screamed through the corridors of the Velkai research station. Commander Tae-Yang ran toward the command center, his boots pounding against the metal floor. Around him, other officers rushed to their posts. Everyone knew what the alarms meant. The Kreth were coming. Tae-Yang burst into the command center and saw the main screen. His heart sank. Dozens of red dots filled the display. Enemy ships, more than they had ever seen before. The Kreth Empire had sent its full might against them. Captain Byung-ho stood at the tactical station, his face grim. He looked up as Tae-Yang approached. The captain shook his head slowly. No words were needed. They both understood. This was the end. The Velkai coalition had been fighting the Kreth for 3 years. At first they thought they could win. Their ships were fast. Their weapons were precise. But the Kreth had something the Velkai did not understand. They called them reality weapons. These terrible devices could tear apart space itself. Planets simply vanished when the Kreth used them. Entire star systems turned to dust. The Velkai tried everything. They built bigger ships. They created new shields. They formed alliances with other species. Nothing worked. The Kreth kept coming, world after world falling before them. Now only a handful of Velkai worlds remained. This station orbited one of them. Ambassador Jiwoo entered the command center. She moved with practiced grace despite the chaos around her. Jiwoo had spent years negotiating with other species, trying to find help. She had failed. No one wanted to fight the Kreth. Everyone was too afraid. She walked to Tae-Yang and spoke quietly. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed the truth. She was terrified. They all were. Dr. Hana arrived last. She was younger than the others, a scientist who studied old civilizations. Most people thought her work was pointless. Who cared about dead species when living ones were dying? But today Hana carried something important. She held a data tablet against her chest like a shield. Tae-Yang noticed her immediately. Hana never came to the command center during battles. She belonged in the research labs, buried in her ancient texts and forgotten languages. Hana moved to the center of the room. She activated her tablet and projected an image onto the main screen. The tactical display disappeared, replaced by a star map. At its center was a small yellow star. Around it orbited several planets. One was marked in blue. Captain Byung-ho growled in frustration. They did not have time for history lessons. The enemy was minutes away, but Hana ignored him. She spoke quickly, her words tumbling over each other. She told them about the archive she had found. It was old, very old, thousands of years old. The archive spoke of a species called humans. They lived near the yellow star on the blue planet. The planet was called Earth. According to the records, humans were warriors, not just soldiers, but something more. They fought with a fury that terrified other species. They never surrendered. They never gave up. Even when facing certain death, they kept fighting. The archive said humans had conquered this entire region of space long ago. Then suddenly they vanished. Every human ship disappeared. Every human station went silent. Earth itself stopped broadcasting. For over a century, no one had heard from them. Most species assumed humans were extinct. Byung-ho laughed bitterly. So Hana wanted them to call for help from ghosts? From legends? Even if humans were real once, they were gone now. Dead. Extinct. Like the Velkai would be soon. But Tae-Yang studied the star map carefully. He saw something in the data that made him pause. The human planets showed no signs of destruction, no debris fields, no dead worlds. The system simply went dark. Ships that approached it never returned. Probes sent toward Earth stopped transmitting at the edge of the system. Ambassador Jiwoo stepped forward. She understood what Tae-Yang was thinking. Maybe the humans were not dead. Maybe they were hiding. But why would they hide? And more importantly, why would they help the Velkai now? Hana answered before anyone could ask. The archive contained something else. A message. A promise that humans had made long ago to any species that needed help. The message was simple. If you call, we will answer. The command center fell silent. Everyone stared at the star map. The yellow star seemed to pulse on the screen as if it were alive. As if it were waiting. Outside the station, the Kreth fleet grew closer, their reality weapons charged. In hours, maybe less, the station would be destroyed. The planet below would follow. Then the next world, and the next until nothing remained of the Velkai civilization. Tai Yang made his decision. They had nothing to lose. If humans were extinct, the message would go nowhere. If humans were hiding, maybe they would ignore it. But if there was even a small chance that humans still existed and might help, they had to try. He ordered Dr. Hana to prepare the message. She worked quickly, her fingers dancing across her tablet. The message would contain everything. The Velkai's history, their war with the Kreth, their desperate situation, and a plea. A simple request for help from a dying civilization to one that might no longer exist. The station's long-range transmitter activated. It was old technology, barely powerful enough to reach nearby systems, but Hana had modified it using instructions from the archive. The signal would be different, encoded in a way that only humans could understand. If they were out there, if they were listening, the message launched into space. It traveled faster than light, carried by quantum relays that had been silent for centuries. The signal raced toward the yellow star, toward Earth, toward a species that the galaxy had forgotten. Captain Byung-ho ordered all ships to defensive positions. They would buy as much time as they could. Every second might matter. If the humans answered, they would need time to arrive. If they answered at all. Ambassador Jiwoo stood beside Taeyang as they watched the enemy approach. She asked him if he truly believed the humans would come. Taeyang did not answer immediately. He thought about the archive, about the stories of human warriors who never quit, about a species so dangerous that they had once ruled the stars. Finally, he spoke. He said he did not know if humans would come. He did not know if they even existed anymore. But he knew one thing. The Velkai had called out into the darkness. Now they could only wait and see what answered. Far away, beyond the edge of known space, the message reached its destination. It touched the boundaries of the Sol system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then deep beneath the surface of Earth, ancient systems awakened. Computers that had slept for 100 years came online. Alarms sounded in hidden bunkers. Humanity had received the call. Now they had to decide whether to answer, and if they did answer, what form that answer would take. The Velkai had asked for aid. They had called out for help. But they did not understand what they had awakened. They did not know that humans had not disappeared by accident. Humans had gone into hiding for a reason. They had been hurt, betrayed, nearly destroyed. And in their hiding, they had changed. They had grown stronger, harder, more dangerous than ever before. The Velkai wanted saviors. The galaxy was about to get something very different.